going to be in September that we review it, is that going to be plenty of time for public consultation and the activity to temporarily halt for summer until the bylaw is reviewed for next year? So I know the time constraints, but the public have come to us and said that there's a concern there, and there is a issue with a lot of cars parking up there and the activity that's happening from the Freedom Camping. So I just want to be assured that this is going to go through.
Through you, Chair.
Thank you.
So the bylaw does allow council to decide to temporarily close an area to freedom camping, such as the Marina car park. That doesn't require a consultative process if it's for public safety or to allow for public access. So the report to EPNR in September will be recommending that as a course of action, and then that can be discussed at that committee. And if a decision is made to temporarily suspend the freedom camping, then we'll have a communications plan ready to go to make sure that the message is clear.
So that could be implemented before the summer season.
Yes, if the committee decides that it supports that course of action.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. The botanical ponds, we're getting scope and pricing on that. Does that all go?
Currently, the costings are way above the budget that's been allowed, so we are looking at several other options as to which way we can go, which are slightly more cost effective. So that is still a work in progress, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's nothing further from the action sheet, we'll have a quick look at the governance work plan. Just for noting. Did we have an apology from Councillor McLean? Did anyone heard from Councillor McLean? There's no leave of absence. All right, we've got quite a few members from the public here at the moment. Welcome everybody. And we've got a bit of input there. First, we'll have Ken Rickard. He's here. Kent. Thanks, Kent. Kent's going to got an issue with the Gardner Place trees. No. Freedom Camping, sorry. Oh, it's close. Yeah. Thanks, Kent.
Good morning and hello, my name is Kent. I'd like to speak briefly about an article in the Gisborne Herald titled Steptoe's Backyard, and the Haroita Waka Club members were complaining about the freedom campers. I am currently living in my vehicle, but I do not class myself as a freedom camper. However, I do spare time near the tourists and other freedom campers, other Kiwis that are living in their vehicles. I believe that the complaints by the Haroita Club members are a little bit selfish. When you invite people to stay at your house as your guests, you are required to clean up after them. But when they leave, so it is with tourists in our country. As we Kiwis, we have to pick up after tourists. If recreational services and the police aren't having major problems or issues with the tourists, we as Kiwis should be a little bit more sharing and a little bit more patient. Also, I'd like to add, with so many city councils making rules and bylaws for tourists, this city council should be a little bit more lenient, as Gisborne people should welcome tourists to our region without too many rules. Some of these tourists stay working in our area and therefore require a bit more freedom within their routines. As a small city, we should attract freedom campers as they can spend money in our region. Let's other city councils chase away their tourists by having too many rules. To finish, an idea to reduce the complaints from the Haroita Club members would be to move them. There is plenty of room at Anzac Park for all the rowing clubs to leave their toys lying around. And then next summer, the freedom campers won't upset anybody. You know, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thanks for that. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Foster.
Do you agree, Kent, that there's a capacity issue at, down at the Marina car park a lot of the time with, with the parking requirements for council staff and for the public to use, and that the activity is sometimes not conducive to the beautiful environment that is there? I mean, I'm all for freedom camping as well. I promoted Clyde Beach. So
questions,
yeah. Yeah, so do you think?
There's
this
two
is
questions
the
here.
issue?
The first one is I don't think the Blue Line does have enough capacity. You've got 4 lanes of car parks and you give 1 to the Freedom Campers. I think at a certain time of night, almost the whole car park should be opened up to anybody who wants to use it. And then by 7 a.m. in the morning, they must move on and leave it open to you people to have your free car park during the day. The next one is with the mess and the rubbish. When I read the complaint in the newspaper, I went straight down there to have a look and I saw bugger all. All I can see is boats lying around everywhere. Right, I come in, I complained straight away, said, there's no rubbish, what's this? And the lady said it was from Christmas time, there's all the rubbish piling up. So then I went and talked to the recreational services and I said, do they have a problem with picking up extra mess when the tourist, because the tourist would empty out their vehicle, drive to Auckland, leave the country, it's time to go home. And if this is their last port of call, of course we're going to end up with extra rubbish here at certain times. It's just part of our job as local people to help pick it up. And I'm also I pick up rubbish myself around the place. You know? Does that answer both your questions?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thanks for that. Right, now we have Klaus Sorensen. Klaus. Just before Klaus starts, I've just had a note that Councillor McLean's stuck in Auckland, so he's put in an apology. So, move for apologies. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, councillors. In particular, I'd like to thank Councillor Stoltz. Are we on? There we go. That's better. Red light's on. Thank you for giving us the opportunity of this hearing. In particular, I'd like to thank Councillor Stoltz, who gave us some kind advice, and that's the reason that we're here today. We represent a loose group called Gardner Place Tree Supporters Group. We made a submission to you once previously. However, new information has come to hand, which we believe justifies taking a little bit more of your time on this matter. We're asking the council and the Community Services Development Committee that the 11 Gardner Place Gleditsia trees be retained and receive overdue maintenance and pruning. We have a list of reasons which you have hopefully in front of you. The trees provide an intrinsic setting for Gardner Place. It's very much part of the character of the street. Their amenity value lies in the fact that being deciduous, they provide shade in the summer and allow light in the winter. Number of residents bought properties in the street because of the attractive setting related to the trees. There are about 30 households in Gardner Place. About 3 have complained about the trees, principally concerning leaf fall and seed pods. We have great sympathy for those neighbours, and there are a number of us who are more than happy to help in the future clearing the leaves and the seed pods if they become an irritation. An arborist report, which we received from the council officers dated 15th of October 2018 from Roberts Tree Surgeons, found the trees to be healthy in all respects and causing no damage or danger. That's the quote. The council's consultation survey last year on residents' views on the trees was not well devised and gave some the impression by seeking opinions on replacement species that the trees would be removed regardless. The removal of the trees would, we believe, contravene the council's stated support for measures to reduce pollution and climate change and removing an important urban carbon sink. Every tree matters, we submit. Both the process of consultation and the decision-making by council, which led to the trees being placed on the program for tree removal, we believe were flawed. Specifically, the program for tree removal, which was one of the appendices for the recommendation that went to this committee on the 13th of February 2019, that described the Gardner Place Gladitsias as, quote, at risk of structural failure, high maintenance, end quote. This is contrary to the Roberts report. I have requested a copy of that particular report from the council officers. They haven't been able to provide one. I don't know how that statement made it onto the appendix of trees for removal, but we do contest that. As I said before, on the 13th of February, the Community Development Services Committee approved the street Trees and Gardens Plan implementation. And that assertion, which in light of the Roberts report now to hand, means the decision was based on incorrect information in our belief. There's been no maintenance, hence no cost of the trees over at least the last 2 years. There have been no fallen limbs during storms during that period. We've had some very strong southerlies and there was leaf fall, but no branches. The trees, in our view, simply require overdue maintenance, which we understand would amount to about $600 per tree, as opposed to $1,200 per tree for their removal. Assuming maintenance at 5 yearly periods, the maintenance cost per tree per annum would be about $120 per tree, a small price to pay for their amenity and environmental benefit. Councillors, we don't want to get into a numbers game, I don't think. The council survey identified 9 residents in favour of removing and replacing the trees. Our submission is signed by 14 residents. As I said, we don't want to get into a numbers game, but I believe what we're offering is a sensible compromise. The street is obviously divided as to opinion on trees, and therefore maintaining them, pruning them, and at least giving them another chance to prove their merit, I think would be a sensible thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Just remind the committee that we are under a decision to remove at this stage. No, sorry. Sorry, you can't. No, sorry, you can't. Microphone, Bill.
To remove the
No,
trees.
we're just in a question stage with the submitter.
No, I won't.
You got a question of the submitter?
Yes, just a general question in regards to the Roberts tree surgeons. How did you come about the information for that report, and does that report actually exist?
Well, I didn't make it up, so that's good.
To verify myself.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
no,
asking.
sure thing. I asked the council officers for copies of all arborist reports on the gladiolus in the street, and the only report they could find was the Robert Tree Surgeons one, which identified them as being in good health. So where the assertion that they were subject to structural failure and they were high maintenance came from, no one knows. And that was what the committee based its previous decision on, was that assertion which has no report to support it.
And sorry, supplementary. You have this report at the moment, the Roberts Tree Surgeon report?
I don't have it. I didn't bring it with me, but I have cited it. It was sent to me by Laird Kennedy, so if you ask him, he's happy to supply it to you.
No, thank you very much.
The compromise that the committee took was that there would be virtual immediate replacement of those trees. Why is with a more suitable species? You do not see that as a suitable?
Simply by virtue of the fact that when those replacement trees reach maturity and begin to provide the amenity value that the existing ones do, I'll be long gone.
I mean, when we made the decision, I'm not asking a question, but when we made the decision back about replacing them, it was about a majority rule with the signatories that we had. So we were under the impression that the majority of those households were wanting to remove those trees. Now we're in a position where it's obviously...
No, you're not asking a question of the submitter there, Councillor Foster.
Sorry?
You're not asking a question of the submitter there, you're getting into the debate.
Well, no, I'm asking a question to you and to our staff. So, I mean, because otherwise this is not going to come up anywhere else during our meeting unless we can bring it up as a special...
The purpose of the submission is that we can question submitters. We're not getting into the debate at this stage. We will take it up later.
Okay. Why don't we do it later?
Well, that's the process. Larry, you know the process. The process is a submitter comes in and you can question the submitter on the submission. That's our process.
You can, as councillors, not at this meeting, choose to revoke the motion, but that's not
Yeah, it needs to be a report. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
What, what do the people that are in attendance today walk away knowing, having had their submission just now? Can we tell them that we're going to revisit the decision, that we are going to,
We have to make a decision to revisit the decision.
well, should we be telling our audience that that's what we're going to do? Because they've come and presented and asked for a different resolution to what we've got.
How many times do you want to go around? We've had submissions, then submissions on the submissions. At some point, the committee has to take the strength to make a decision.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is, what are they going to walk away today knowing, having come to us and spent the energy and time to come and talk to us? What's our next action we're going to take
Okay, so.
for our audience that are here today? That's all I'm
So if the
asking.
committee wants a further report, then you can request that based on the evidence you've had from the submission.
And does that need to be raised now, or are we going to deal with that?
I'll let you raise it now.
On the action sheet.
So can we put it on the action sheet to, in light of what we've heard today, can we please revisit?
If that's the will of the committee, sure.
If that is,
Can an individual request this? Because I've read the report, it's part of our.
Yeah.
I've read the Roberts report, it was part of the reports given to us during the decision making. We've also had the list of signatories from the council survey on the desires of the community. I sympathise, but there's nothing new in this information for me to readdress my decision. I don't understand what we would be requesting of staff other than providing us the same information they had provided us in the last decision making round. Unless there's something else you're requesting.
And I have to admit, I'm in the same place.
To you, Mr. Chairman, when we get into a sticky situation like we have just been put in, we take a no decision or go with the original decision.
Well, the situation for me is no different to where it was last time we had to submit as for and against. You know, we're at the same place.
We're forcing ourselves into a sticky situation by litigating it now.
Yeah.
It's a process.
All right, at this stage, I'll put it on the action sheet because I think we've got a majority with that desire.
So that means nothing will happen in the meantime. That means nothing will happen in the meantime. As far as the trees go, they'll stay until we address it on the action sheet.
I guess so, but I'm not that happy with that going that way because the council has been through this process before. Why do we want to go there again?
I would say
the subject matter of the petition is no different than we had last time we took up the matter. It's no different at all.
the numbers are different. The numbers of the supporters against the numbers of the objectors is way different. There's a majority.
No.
Yes, it is.
You have to go back to the previous reports.
I remember it.
And as the submitter said, it's not a numbers game. Councillor Farahin.
I agree with yourself and Councillor Dowsing in regards to where we've got into on this issue. While I am hazy in regards to the content of the Roberts Road report, I do clearly remember us talking about the makeup of the community and how many people were affected, and that this was definitely a controversial issue in regards to the community. But we had consulted heavily in regards to the decision that we had got into previously. But I'm mostly in favour of what yourself and Councillor Dowsing were saying, was because we set a very dangerous precedence when we start revisiting everything that comes across the table when the information is substantially different from what we've received before. So yeah, I do hear you in regards to what you're saying about putting that on the actions sheet, and that looks like there's a majority support around it, but I don't think it's as majority as you may be thinking.
We have to be fair here, and if we were being fair, we would now put it to the persons that are in favour of removal of the tree to go out and get 15 names. You know, is that our process that, okay, we've got someone that's come in and got 14 names, so we'll go right through a different process now, and we'll put it to the person that came in, and those that are in favour of removing the tree, we'll put it to them because they're not aware of this, what's happened at this meeting, because they thought the trees were going to be felled. So are we now going to allow them to go try and find 15 names and then make it a numbers game? The councillors are saying virtually that it's a numbers game.
Can I ask a matter of process?
Yeah.
Can I suggest that, that during our break, councillors who are interested can look up the previous report, find out the numbers for themselves, and then and we can take a stance in a general business manner at the end of this, whether we put it onto the action sheet.
Okay, well, we haven't got a paper on
meeting.
this, it's just a submission, so
Yep.
we'll let it lie for now, and we'll make a decision later on. No, sorry, we've put the matter down for now. Thank you.
The point I was raising is we have a responsibility when members of the public make a deputation to this council to have to go back and respond to what they've brought to us. That's what I was raising. How are we going to respond to the people in terms of this deputation was my question. I'm not at all implying a numbers game. I'm saying we have a responsibility to respond. And I was trying to follow up how we are going to respond.
Okay, I'll put that to start.
Yes, rather than leave them in limbo. That was what I was trying to get at.
Through the chair, can I just make a suggestion? I think Councillor Dowsing's suggestion was a good one as an alternative as well, and taking into account Councillor Dunn's point, which is was a correct point, that actually submitters should be able to get a response from the committee about where the committee stands. At the moment, the committee's position is that it has decided that these trees will be removed through various processes. Mr. Sorensen has made a further submission and deserves a response to that. So there are two ways we can go about doing this, in my view. I've just talked with Mrs. Khan about it. So yeah, you could review the material that you've been provided to date in the recess, or you could ask us on the action sheet to come back with the full picture of what you have considered to date, because it appears to me that actually, as these things go on, people forget stuff that has already been talked about. So you deal with the issue at hand that is most obvious to you. But actually, there is a lot of information around this particular issue. It might feel like a relatively small issue in the scale of things, but it's a really important one for the people of the street, and more broadly around the greening of our city. So I think my suggestion would be, you give us an action to come back to this committee, the next committee meeting, with the full summary of where we stand, where you can make a decision about if you want to change your resolution, rescind your previous resolution, change your position, and make a decision with the full information in front of you. So at the moment, you have Mr. Sorensen's information, which is really current for you. That's my suggestion.
All right, happy with that, Councillor Dunn? Yeah. All right, thank you. Right. Now we have Karen Tate with a petition from the Olympic pool regarding the Olympic pool. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
Karen Tate.
Hi, Karen.
I live in Gisborne. I've been here 3 years now. I hope you've had a chance to read my letter.
Yep, thanks.
It's just around, in the 1st of July, the price went up on the pool. We had no indication that this was going to happen, and a lot of us have put our money aside for that. So it was just, we weren't notified. There's a few discrepancies, and we just want to address that. That's all. Like, we've got some people that come to the pool that get in for $2.50 if they've coached sports over the years but not if we work voluntarily in the community, and there's so many of us that work voluntarily in the community that go down to the pools for the water aerobics. And the reason we do this is to keep ourselves, fit and out of the hospital system. You can see by the petition I've got there, I've got quite a few signatures, and that's just in the middle of winter. That's not all of them that come, but that's all I could get in the couple of weeks that I had prepared it. Since I've been there, it's been really great for my health because I've had arthritis since I've been 5 years old. So I have to keep myself going all the time. And it's now I'm a pensioner. So it gets a bit beyond your scope if it's $6.80 every time. I did get green prescription, but I'm only allowed 2 cards, which takes me up to 6 or 9 months to use that up. It depends how many times I go. Then I'm not allowed to have another one for 3 years. So within that time, I have to pay $6.80. I've done so the thing to me was that the volunteer situation, I don't know why that is, why people that coach sports get in for cheaper price and the other people that volunteer in the community don't actually get that opposite, they don't get that option to come. I've heard a lot of people drop off since I've been there, and it seems to me if we make it cost effective for everybody, we're going to get the numbers. Sometimes in the summertime we can get 40 to 50 people at a class, which is huge. So I was looking at maybe us in putting in a concession card for aqua aerobics, which isn't there at the moment. I've looked at Whakatane, they've got, if you have an aqua aerobics concession card, and it's basically for seniors, for permanent disability, community services card, they've got a concession card there for 10 sessions for $54. And in Napier, they've got 10 sessions for $50. So that just encourages people to come along if they're going to save a little bit of money. But it's actually helpful for us who are on pension. I found myself now, I'm a pensioner, so I have to call myself that. But I just see the people around me dropping off because they can't afford it. And I just feel really sad about that. I'm a social worker. I've worked in social services for many years in Auckland, and I just see it really sad when I see some people that have got strokes and that come and get better, but then they can't afford to come. And so that's the reason why I'm here today. I've written it all down in my letter, and it's also a social thing for a lot of these people that come along. We've started a coffee group at the end of the month across at Peppers. We go over and have a cup of coffee, and some people never get to talk, but some people do. We've got some people that are deaf, and it's really great to get them into the community and talk. And I think it's doing great for their mental health as well as their physical health, So I'm just saying to look at it. And when the price went up, I thought, nothing's changed down here. We still come here in the winter time. It's cold with the wind coming underneath that tent or marquee or whatever it is. And we have to walk in the cold to the change sheds, and that's the hard part. And that's where a lot of us get a chill and that. In Auckland, I went to Westwave. That's where I was in Henderson. It's an Olympic pool down there they have underwater hockey and everything like that. And they do charge a lot of money for their aqua aerobics. They have a concession card as well. But the thing is, when you finish your aqua aerobics, you can put the belt on and do water walking in the deep pool, or you can use the spa pool or the sauna. So what we used to do is jump into the spa pool afterwards for a few minutes. So, yeah, so is there any questions that you want to ask me?
How many people would are you talking about that have dropped off due to the extra cost?
Really hard to say that. I've spoken to 2 or 3 people, but I've spoken to somebody from the stroke club and he said that quite a few of them can't, they're on a fixed income. They can't stretch it and it keeps going up. It's because we pay 20 cents for the shower if we have a shower. Some of them go home with their wet togs on because they don't do that. Or they like to go home because of the change rooms and that. But it's lovely to have a shower. I mean, I know that that's the higher price in other pools was that you didn't have to pay for showers and that. So there's all that involved, and I'm not sure how many's dropped off. I know there's about two or three since I've been going that I've known. And of course, that has a flow-on effect. I know a young, about 50-year-old Māori lady that used to come get the bus from Kaiti into town and walk all the way down Gray's Street to come. She can't afford to come anymore because she just can't afford it. It's just, we need it for our health, really. And, yeah.
All right, thank you. I was been down there a bit lately. I was there yesterday and it was the warmest place to be. The water was 28 degrees. I was amazed.
Yeah, no, it goes from 27.5
Yeah.
to 28.
Yeah.
It's not so warm sometimes when you get in, but after you've been doing a bit of exercise, it's
Great,
fine.
isn't it? Yeah.
We had to do without it a couple of weeks this year because the boilers and that broke down.
Yeah.
Yes, anything you'd like to say, Bernadette? I've got a few people come with me today
Yeah,
from the
sure,
pool.
that's fine.
Some couldn't come.
Am I allowed to say
Susan,
something?
Susan, yeah.
I think every one of us in the pool who goes regularly would know of 2 or 3 people who weren't able to come
Okay,
because the cost is getting up. And to be effective, you really need to go more than once a week. I think 3 times a week would make it an effective form of exercise. So, I mean, you're getting close to $21 then, and that's quite a lot for some people, especially people who are on their own, that sort of thing. And I believe this petition is about making it more accessible to everyone who would like to do it and needs to do it.
No, you brought up some really good points around pricing and that, and there's a bit of unfamiliarity with where the pricings are and how they've got to where they are at the moment. So we'll be requesting a report back on that pricing structure and what we can do about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Yes, I was going to request that we get an action sheet item, particularly with a focus on potential joint funders for healthcare activity.
Yeah, I was not that aware that green prescription did drop off after a little while because green prescription was a good one.
Yeah, so they've actually, because they've seen people dropping off, they've actually got together and they've started up another class. They've got one class on a Wednesday at lunchtime, or today, I'll be going down there.
Yeah.
And it's $2.50 if you're green prescription and $3.50 if you're not.
Yeah.
And so Tory and them have started up another one for a Friday. It hasn't done too well. There's only 2 people went last week, but I think maybe if people get to know about it, but they've started that up on Friday.
It was only the first day last
That was
Friday.
only the first day.
I
So
was down there on Friday when Tori was having her session and I was
The
aware
second
that
one,
the
was
numbers seemed a lot lower than what she usually gets there. So there's,
yeah, it has been. We've noticed a drop off, but there's tough ones of us that keep going through the winter because we have to do it. I can't walk with my ankles get really hard at walking along the thing, but yeah.
all right. Oh, well, thanks for that.
Just
And
thought we'd bring it to your attention today.
okay, that's great. We'll definitely follow up on
Thank
that.
you.
So.
Thanks for listening.
All right, that's us. No motions. No adjourned business. Okay, we'll go to the East Cape Township Plan update.
Mr. Chairman, I want to move this and speak to it and compliment our staff on a job very well done. And those that have taken the time to read the report, you will see some of the original township plans were put together 10, 12 years ago. And having worked and been to several of these meetings with our staff, they've done an incredible job as evidence there, but not only from council's perspective, from those ones within those respective communities that I've been talking to are certainly grateful to the staff for the job they've done. So for me, I have no problem in moving this. The only question I do have, Mr. Chairman, in relation to the wharves in Hicks Bay, where are we actually on that one? There's been a lot of work done, I know. But is that not in the gamut of community development?
It's not part of township plan update, is it?
No, through you, Chair, that's not part of the township update. We do know that there's a keen interest in seeing those walls restored, and we're still looking at options to support that and fund that. So that work's ongoing, but it's not covered in this report.
Thanks, Secretary Councillor Howes. I just need some clarity around the funding. At the moment, you've got, there's a lot of stuff in this paper about funding being NZCT. So I see a lot of uncertainty there. How much of the township plan is certain it can be done, and how much are we sitting there thinking, well, it'll be done if we get the funding? Because I'm kind of looking at a lot of that funding as being at risk because it's kind of council business as usual, a lot of it. So I'm not sure whether the funding that we are applying to will be secured.
Through you, Chair, I'd pass you over to Carol Martyr, who's actually been heavily involved in developing these township plans and working with Julie Condor on the potential funding options. So it's my understanding that they believe they have a pretty strong case, otherwise we wouldn't have got to this point. And there's also measures in place if we don't get the funding or less than expected, that we will sit down with the community and reprioritise the actions, and the community are aware of this as well. We've been quite open and honest with them that achieving everything that's listed in the short-term actions is reliant on external funding, so that they know that that is sort of a possibility that we won't get all the funding we seek. I'll leave Carol to explain sort of what's more certain and what may or may not drop off the list if funding isn't available.
Through the Chair. We've done a little bit of preliminary costing to get an idea of what we can deliver and what we can't deliver. And as Joe said, we have been really transparent with the community in that process. A lot of it is business as usual. So we're talking with Roding and just seeing what they can pay for out of their budgets. Liberal communities as well, we're having those ongoing discussions with. The things that are, I suppose, are extra to that would be the cultural heritage interpretation, signage and things like that. Just those little artistic extras that we'd like to deliver for sense of place reasons. And so that's what the sort of things that we will be going to funding for.
So the level of the existing township and hub budgets?
So through the LTP, there was basically $500,000 allocated every other year for the implementation. We have got a little bit extra. I think we're up to 633,000 off the top of my head for implementation this financial year.
No, that's good, because that's where I was getting to, was that budget was always in place in the long-term plan, and I just wanted to make sure that that was secured for the work. Yeah.
Can you recall me coming, not just this meeting, to council and saying, is the council an Indian giver? We were told it was $500,000 per community, and then the top end got lumped together. So it didn't happen, but hey, I think that does a marvellous job thus far, and I'm sure they'll be successful with the funding.
All right, anyone else questions? What else I've got here? Just no, that's all right. Okay, so recommendations on that, isn't there? They've all been moved by Councillor Burdett and seconded by Councillor Dowsing. And I'll just read them because there are a few there. So it's noted in the content of the report, in particular the community endorsed township concept plans, which are attached. We approved the short-term projects in the East Cape Township Plan Update for 2019 for implementation. 3, we approved the preparation and submission of an application to the NZCT Trust for up to $500,000 to support delivery of community-led recreational works into Waipuhi townships. And 4, approve the preparation and submission of the application to the Tourism Infrastructure Fund for works that support tourism development in Waipuhi townships. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks very much. You want to do that now? All right. Okay, page 40, the Alfred Cox Skate Park. Proposal to develop a concept design.
Move.
Yep, moved by councillor Foster, second by councillor Dunn. And would like to introduce a new staff member that's got a bit of relevance to this paper. So I'll get Andrew to introduce Abby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So hopefully you'll all remember the significant mahi that was done around the community facility strategy development by council, but also in strong collaboration in the community and with our partners ECT and Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti. And so that was managed by our strategy team. That work was completed last year. Since then, we've been working really hard to find the right person to support the implementation of the major project area in that strategy. So it's taken us quite a while, but actually we've got somebody really good into that role. So the way that's being managed is that Sport Gisborne, ECT and Gisborne District Council have a steering group, a joint steering group of senior managers, which is Stefan, Chief Executive of Sport Gisborne, Audine, Grace Curtier from ECT and myself, providing guidance to the person in that role. That person is Abby Banks, who's sitting at the back there. This is Abby's first time in a council committee, so I'm not going to ask her to say too much. But actually, just to say, we're really happy to have Abby on board. She's been here for a couple of weeks now. She's starting to get into the engagement side of things. One thing we were really impressed with was her structured process focus that she came through within the interview process. And that's what we really need in what is quite an amorphous sort of area where there's a lot of politics, a lot of different views, lots of demands, just to try and get some real coherence around that. So I'm really pleased to have Abby on board. You'll hear from her before the end of the year with some information around progress and that sort of thing. I think it's a really exciting step in the way, particularly around the strong engagement that we have with our partners with it being kind of a new model, but at the moment it's working really well.
Thanks for that. Welcome, Abby. It's going to be a challenging role, but it's going to have a lot of reward with what you can get done there, so welcome. Okay, skate park update.
I just want to acknowledge that, the fact that the skate park is just such a well-used venue for our youth in particular, and not, we haven't got a lot to cater for our youth around the place other than sports teams and everything, but being an individual sport and now an Olympic sport, really it is, it's a bit sad to see that the deterioration of this facility has gone as much as it has, even becoming a bit of a health issue. So, for me to support this and to see a plan of upgrading it as soon as possible really would be fantastic. And the numbers are dropping off because of the health and safety issues, which is a real concern because, we want to keep encouraging kids to get out there and be active as possible and not go and play on other devices or whatever. They need to be physical.
My reading of the paper is there was no specific health and safety issues.
There is safety concerns. That's why.
No health and safety issues. Like legal health and safety issues. Thanks, Councillor. Oh, you finished?
Yeah.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like to thank staff for taking such a proactive approach on this after getting the sentiment from council that we were very much in support of it. Very glad to see that you found some budget from our sports parks improvements to take this forward. I think it's not necessarily recognised enough as a sports park in comparison to our large green spaces that we've traditionally supported. So yeah, very happy to see it there. I still find that there's some sentiment around skateboarding, which is very a very old concept and ill-considered, that it's a negative activity. And you see later in today's reports suggestions that we might have e-scooters around our main street, and yet we've still got bylaws stopping skateboarding. So I'm all in support of more for this type of active transport as well.
It only took service 50 years to get around that, so skateboard's probably got another 20 years. Councillor Wharekinger.
That was exactly the point that I was going to touch on, that Councillor Dowsing touched on. Having been a former skater and having my kids having inherited all of my skateboards and stuff, I know what it was like to formally skate around this community, and it wasn't very friendly. The fact that we have cycleways, we have laneways now that are actually kind of more skateboard, smaller roller wheel kind of friendly, that's awesome. And it just makes sense that we look at upgrading the skate park, because if they're going to be using these cycleways and all of these laneways to skate on, they need to have some kind of destination. And this is definitely one of those destinations. I really do want to commend I think it's Julie Robinson and the group down there. They've been keeping active, Alfred Cox Park active in the meantime, and really do want to echo the support to staff about how we've come to the community in regards to this project. So awesome work.
Right. When we talk about the 40 grand, it's got two things there. It says estimated and approximately. So what sort of surety have we got around for 40K or less?
We would need to get a price from a designer for that work. We state an estimate because we don't have a quote for it at this point, but it's within my delegation and within existing budgets to actually deal with. So be happy to leave that to me. That would be appreciated.
So in leaving it to you, it's not going to be more than 40,000. If it came through more than that, what would you do? How high would your delegation go?
I will endeavour to make a good judgment decision around getting the best value for the money that we can invest in it.
You should be a politician. Right, nothing further? Oh, Andrew wants to comment.
Echo my support for this as well. In my view, the skate park is just like the adventure playground and the botanical gardens. It should be an amazing asset for our children. It totally fits with the Tairāwhiti lifestyle. Surfing is one of the main outdoor recreations. Skating goes alongside that as well. I see a lot of activity at the skate park with scooters as well, so it is a multifunctional area. I think it's an asset we'll be really proud to have, and also, as Councillor Wharekinger was saying, an excellent destination when you take into account all the cycleways, etc.
Yeah, it's
So
very
let's
much
do
a
it.
youth hub, isn't it?
Through the chair, at the risk of putting a dampener on the discussion, which is not my intention, but actually when we think about the community facility strategy that you all worked so hard on to get approved, there's actually, at the time it was completed, the estimate on completing the list of priority projects, and that was around $70 million. And actually the skate park is not included in that list, but you'll remember that actually the test is really around the criteria for funding. So the skate park is another example of a priority project in this community that would be tested against the criteria in the community facility strategy for the funders to actually release funds for it. So this is a prioritisation exercise. You know, you've got your own other assets that that are reasonably challenging around, that are well degraded by now, and you have some reasonable challenges around deciding whether the community can afford to replace them or upgrade them or whatever. Skate park's an example of that, so be very careful about dealing with it as a specific transaction. It's actually part of a wider strategy process. All good to support it in principle like we're doing, but just keep that in your back of your minds would be my advice.
Thank you. Yes, just to take the dampener off it. the approach made to council was that skaters and the community group as such would take on the challenge of fundraising for this project. We are enabling them to do so in this scenario, and I think it's the best approach to achieving some of those goals out of that strategy, because we cannot, as council, achieve everything ourselves. So it's great to see. I think the reference was made to the Lawsonfield Theatre fundraising group and setting up a body similar to that to fundraise for the skate park. So I think it's a positive step, and council are being very supportive of it.
All right, we've had moved and seconded. You got that? Yep. Note the content of the report confirms its support for the efforts and aspirations of the Alpha Cox Skate Park Supporter Group, and approve engaging skate park design specialists to prepare a concept design for Gisborne Alpha Cox Skate Park in collaboration with users and supporter of the skate park. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Please, is there a time frame on this activity?
Time frames?
This is something that will be, so through you, the Chair, this is something that we're working on now. So we've had some early discussions with a potential consultant that would be providing the concept.
All right, thank you. Makaraka Cemetery, uplifting of headstones project update. Got Laird here. And it's just a noting report. So Laird, yep.
Good morning. Before we start, the team would like to acknowledge an omission in the report. We acknowledge that a working group was established for this project, which includes representation from the Friends of Makaraka, GDC staff and councillors, representatives from Historic Places Tairāwhiti, and individuals from the community. This group continues to provide strong support for the restoration project as we move forward, and should have been acknowledged in this report. We will make sure they receive this acknowledgement in any subsequent reports moving.
Thanks for that, Lee. So, there's my short report there. Any questions? Moved by Councillor Dowsing, second by Councillor Parihanya. Yeah. Where are they stored at the moment? Just out there, yeah. Storage is long term. Is there time frames around when they can only be stored for so long?
We're still working through that. Part of at the previous meeting that we had, we instructed the remaining 2 stonemasons to provide a detailed scope of reports on each headstone. Only one of them had done that previously. To date, we've only received one of the subsequent quotes and scopes from I forget the name, unfortunately, sorry. Once we receive the second one, we can then provide a bit of a analysis and actually sit down and try to figure out what the timeframes are once we split the headstones out amongst the 3 stonemasons involved. So.
All right, we moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. What have we got? Spatial plan, that's reasonably long, so shall we have a cup of coffee first, too? All right, thank you. We're on page 48, which is the spatial plan progress update.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think these people have done an excellent job thus far. But you will note, when I find the page, this is basically confined to the city. One of the concerns I have, and the question I'm going to ask is, when do we go to the rural sector and really get to the nitty-gritty of what's going to happen 30 years out and have a report back as good as this one?
The nitty-gritty.
So we are currently expanding our engagement to include the rural areas and the townships. We will be having an advisory group workshop next week on the 14th of August, to which all councillors are invited. So I'd encourage you to come if you possibly can, because that's when we'll be going through some more of the nitty-gritty and including the wider region. We'll be getting some documentation to support that workshop onto Docs on Tap this week, so you can peruse it at your leisure and then come ready to ask questions and challenge where the thinking currently is.
Supplementary to that, Mr. Chairman, came to the first spatial plan land use meeting, and it was very well attended by forestry, farming, businesses associated with all that, and businesses within the city that related to the rural area. I assume those are the people you're going to be talking to?
Yes, those people, and also we're engaging with Hapu, with youth, with townships, trying to get the engagement as broad as possible and really widen it out now.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Seymour, then Councillor Dowsing, then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's been my concern, and I've raised that previously, and I'm curious to know that you're going to bring some stuff back to us on the 14th, when we haven't actually talked to our townships to complete the broader picture.
Yeah, so we have had feedback through the township planning from some of the townships, but we know that there's still more to come in. So it's not going to be the end product, but it's giving a clear steer of where we're currently at.
But supplementary, Mr. Chairman, we did quite expressly ask that the townships be given the opportunity to have meetings. And while you're having township planning meetings, which is actually something quite separate, we have not to date given our rural communities the opportunity to be participants, short of through the interest groups or the industries that came to the early meetings that Councillor Burdett raises. And I just think it's a bit disappointing. And when we raised it at the last meeting, at which some councillors came and some council officers were there, we were told that it was going to happen in September, but it does need to happen. I mean, it won't be a spatial plan for Te Rāpiti if we've left out parts of our community. And they need to be engaged early on so we can understand their feedback at the same time as we're understanding other people. So I hope we can do something about that. With some openness and honesty.
Yeah, I went to most of those spatial planning meetings and they seem to be half rural. Yeah, there was real
The
good-
ones in here.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they were industry groups invited.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They were industry and business related, so that aspect. But the actual townships and communities up and down the coast and on the west, I don't believe have had an opportunity to be involved, short of, through feedback on the council's website, because that has been asked for, but often that's not how people participate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just to confirm, we will be going out to those townships, and if you have any key contacts that you want us to make sure we capture, please let us know.
Well, we've got a process in place. The council's used for years to initiate township meetings, so we should be able to use that process. It shouldn't be hard. I mean, we had a really good one last night in Tukumara Bay with about 40 people there listening to the GNS material, and probably 35 in Tolaga Bay later on. So the communities will turn out if you give them the opportunity and give them the information.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank you.
Dowsing, Councillor Foster, then Councillor Finn. I'll see if she wants to get in the queue. So, Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I would like to thank you for this report. The B&A report is excellent, and whilst some councillors have a concern that it's not broad-ranging enough, it is specifically focusing on our very much our central urban area, not even the broader Gisborne city, just the CBD and surrounding areas. It's there's some incredible information in there, and I'd really like to see this be part of the comms strategy going forward in terms of how we, I'd like to see the comms strategy going forward and how we're going to express this information to the community in a real matter of fact way, and bite size, not having to read through the entire document, because it is a barrier to people understanding what we're trying to do. I was so impressed. I've forwarded this document on to many people now to get an understanding around around the housing needs and the development potential in region. It's I think it's a great beginning to the steer that our spatial plan should lead to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hostler.
Yeah, I just read this and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. This is something that actually in Heart of Gisborne over the years when that was operational, we were talking about as far as the CBD and public spaces and all those places that we identified are here. And it's just, and to seeing it being drawn up and little different visible interpretations of it is absolutely awesome. So I just really applaud this. There's a couple of things that I looked at and questioned, and that's the fact that there's saying that our population increase is going to be expected will occur with the 70 plus age group. That'll be the most expected population growth. And I'm kind of questioning that, because actually the more that we do to make our city better, the more we're encouraging young ones to come back, and the young ones are coming back already with some of the transformational things that we're doing. So I really question that. I also question the fact that we're going to have 49,390 in 2028. Hey, we're nearly at 49,100 already. This is all about our population, how I know we've got problems trying to identify how many we've got here with the census and everything, but you just look around, you know that the population is increasing. But
hang around for 5 years, you'll be in there, Larry.
I know, mate, I know. I'll be one of the 70-year-olds in 5 years' time, yeah, for sure. I'll relish getting there first. But yeah, all our plans here are absolutely fantastic, and I would really like to see a lot of this stuff going out to our developers, because the problem is that you've got all these great plans and you've got a vision of how things are going to be, but how do we actually implement it? How do we encourage businesses to relocate that are in what we are saying now in an area that we want to develop in a different type of activity? So there are challenges there, but and I would think most people that are really passionate about this region and our CBD environment. I'm a business owner and a building owner in our CBD. I'm looking at this and all the different things that we can do to make it pedestrian friendly, cycle friendly, and not so car related. It's absolutely fantastic, and I just can't applaud enough the whole page. I read everything word for word, and just really knowing I want to get this done. How do we get it? How do we get this implemented? So for me, I think we've got to get potential developers on board, and how do we encourage people to relocate? We've got incentives here with development contributions and all the other different things that we can do. Obviously, our planning and our district plan, our Tarawhiti district plan, is really archaic. We need to be really looking at that, how we can encourage things. I know there's already businesses wanting to locate in certain areas, and now after looking at this, thinking, well, actually, how do we encourage them not to move somewhere else, and where we move them? So there's a lot of questions, but this is fantastic, and I love the vision.
Councillor Fitt. Councillor Fitt.
Chair, I just had a simple question. It was in regards to youth engagement. I see that you've already been out to see quite a few schools, high schools in there. I just see you've left Lytton High School off the list. Is there a reason for that, or?
It was, through the chair, really a matter of which schools were ready and interested to engage with us.
Yep.
So some schools were more keen than others,
Yep.
so they've made it onto the list.
Right.
Obviously, if Lytton, for example, now comes back and says, actually, we've got some space, we've made some time, then we'll go and talk to them.
Yeah, just thinking there's like close to 1,000 kids there.
Yeah.
That would be really good. No, that's cool. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, with the follow-up from Councillor Foster, really, I mean, these things have been chased around for as long as I've been here, so it's especially the likes of Grey Street and getting sort of the city centre squares and all that. We've been discussing it forever, so I do have Councillor Foster's concern about what we can do, and it is identified that really the first thing we can do is around rezoning. So we've got the city, got a statement there, the city centre will benefit from a comprehensive and simplified rezoning. So I guess that is our first step, and how do we go about making that first step? As far as identifying where they will go from, a lot of that will be based on the rezoning and sort of telling people where to go. As far as private ownership and sort of getting them to go there, that is a more difficult thing. But what we can do is that sort of, as a first step, is that rezoning. So how do we go about that? What's the process?
So through you, Chair, there is a report coming to Council this month on basically a review of the Tairaki Resource Management Plan and whether it's fit for purpose or not. You probably have already formed your views on that, but this is sort of the formal process to make that decision as a council. Once that decision is made, assuming that the decision is made that the plan, or at least parts of the plan, need changing or altering, then that is the clear signal to start to get on with that. Basically, we do have budget set aside in the long-term plan, and it is intended to occur in the long-term plan. So it's something we've planned for. Spatial plan has been very much giving us the groundwork for that Tairaki Resource Management Plan review process.
Oh, just, I mean, a lot of the plans, especially the city plan, is about kind of bringing in rather than pushing out. But just if we go to page 87, I just wasn't sure about that block right in the middle there where it's sort of got as potential residential redevelopment area. 81, 82. Right bang in the middle. What's there at the moment? Yeah, just the split here. I wouldn't have identified that myself as a part of a residential. What is that? Yeah, because there's no street names and that's quite hard to work out. This whole block in there.
Yeah, so these are ideas for exploring further. So because it's identified on this map, it doesn't mean that we will go ahead and do that. So they were just looking at the current uses and how the city centre.
So it's quite commercial, industrial at the moment. So so that would be part of what would have to be rezoned, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a discussion and further research and thought to be had about, does that make sense to change the use or not, or are we happy with what's there currently?
On that area, it is a light commercial area within essentially the heart of our residential. A lot of the usage there is in yards and storage, not necessarily in active use. So it potentially does make sense, but again, it's private ownership and but it's entirely within the urban area, so it could be developed.
And I think that's with the rezoning, there's a lot of talk about existing use, and I mean, it's an area like that, we couldn't rezone without existing use rights for quite a considerable amount of time, wouldn't it? Yeah, but to encourage that to be residential, it probably would be. You'd probably want to rezone it, or else it'll always stay that way. I don't know what the zoning of that specifically is, but it probably is light commercial. Anyway, I was just curious as to. Nothing fit. Yep. You difficult, Bill? Well, have a go.
I'm just concerned from my own observations, and I guess it relates to the spatial plan going forward. But it appears to me, in terms of empty shops in the main street, we got issues. Is that our responsibility? Is it the business's responsibility to? Right, there's heaps. Yeah. And I could be wrong,
But I think it's getting worse. As long as I've been here, that's always been a concern. It's kind of filled up and emptied out and filled up and emptied out. It's kind of very transitional. Yeah.
Some are just commercial activity, some are viable, some are not. And winter time, you usually see a few shops are empty over the summer period when the population increases and more people are coming in. Some of those activity shops will fill up. You know, the classic is Low Street. I mean, you look at Low Street now as opposed to 3 or 4 years ago. All those little boutique little businesses all down there, butchers and all the little shops, and it's fantastic. It's actually just evolving as we hoped, and a lot of these other areas will. I mean, that's just the commercial environment that we're in, you know, and commercial retail activity out there has been suffering because of online, but you know, people just got to work for that nowadays, and that's just part of the process.
Councillor Dowsey.
This report specifically addresses that, doesn't it? Because there's talk, there's designs in here around active street frontages, around relocation of events into city centre areas, into zoning for community spaces. Lots of actions around increasing footfall and into a reduced footprint of our city centre, so that we do get a much more vibrant and appealing and concentrated usage. This is exactly the mechanism that council has to address that. So it's already taken care of in this document. If we can turn this into action items once we've done our research, then amazing.
All right. Fantastic bit of work there. There's a lot of great reading in there. So yeah, thanks very much. Been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, where are we now? Oh, it's good having these tabs. It's excellent. Okay, Tairāwhiti Museum and annual plan. We've got Penny and Eloise. Alan. All right. Just up the front, will do. Yeah. Right. All right, thanks very much. You just here for questions, or you want to? All right. Okay. Excuse me. No. Bit of a shock to the system, the insurance. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. Was there justification of that? Is it just how it's going at the moment, or
The insurance.
going from 16 to 30?
And to,
Yeah. Oh, it's just from the financials. I just yeah, it was a bit of a shock to see the insurance go up so much over the year. It was, well, it's on the accounts for the museum. So we've got last year at 16,000, this year at 30,000.
so that was. Oh,
GDC insurance, yeah. So, yeah. So that's
Sorry.
a council question.
Yeah,
It's our
yes, I
insurance,
can
yeah.
explain that. So apart from a big increase in the cost of insurance, like massive, there's also that figure, actually only 18,000 and something is for the museum building owned by the Museum Trust. The rest is for, say, Leisner House, Star of Canada, Wiley Cottage, and covers off their insurance, and those are council-owned buildings, so it's actually 18 grand for the Museum Trust building.
So when that bill come out in, did we sort of have a look at other options for it, or is just, it is what it is?
Council, so the museum building owned by the Museum Trust has come under the council's buying of insurance, because we're members of BOPLAS, and that's the best deal for insurance that we get across a number of councils. And to complicate things further, insurance year goes across 2 of our financial years, so it's sort of all, it has to be recalibrated, but that is for the total of all of the buildings on the site. So it's 18,000 in fact for the museum building owned by the trust.
Thanks, councillor Rosie.
Just on that, I mean, it is a council-owned asset, so this would be one of the only times that we actually see individual insurance on a particular council asset, and consider it in that way. It's part of owning an asset that we need to insure it. I don't see that as a topic that
Well,
is
I mean, I
saying
always
we
look
can
at accounts
change.
I always look at accounts on the basis of what happened last year, what's happening this year. And that's a significant increase. Yeah.
Chairman, as part of the course in the industry, even when you shop
Oh,
around.
not doubling.
Not double, but we put ours out for tender and it was almost double.
All right, yeah, just,
It's only gone up by
well,
1,400.
what are you looking at?
You're looking at the council contribution to the insurance. The actual insurance cost has only gone up $1,200.
Oh, where did you put
And the
that?
operating expenses.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, well spotted. Councillor Foster? No?
Yeah, I just want to question that right through the report, there's mention of the roof maintenance, and I just want to make sure that the money that's been allocated is enough to kind of keep the maintenance up to the scratch and the requirement that the museum is happy with leakages and the maintenance of leaf removal and all that. So is the budget being okay to now to cater for all the needs that are required on the roof maintenance?
I think what we have seen over the course of the lease is that their kind of maintenance, it hasn't been done, deferred maintenance has contributed to problems over the years, and we're now very shortly to start addressing the roof, some specific issues on the roof that's been discussed in previous times. But we are coming to another lease renewal point, and my feeling is that we need to take a much more proactive approach between council staff and the museum, so that we are doing a much more active maintenance program. That's my feeling at this point. Going forward, is we need to not approach things in a kind of ad hoc, or there's an emergency, let's fix it. We need to make a much more proactive approach as the building grows, as the building ages, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's alluded to when you've said that going forward, you've got upgrades of walling and carpets and lighting, which all ring serious dollar bells for me. So yeah, we do need to get some decent planning in place.
Absolutely, and because we have those shared arrangements around the lease and responsibilities around the lease, having a safe, watertight building, only if that shell is there strong, can the trust go forward with confidence on its responsibilities around maintaining, upgrading the interiors in terms of responsibilities under the lease too.
Okay. Hey, Councillor Seymour.
Can I just ask, has the maintenance to the roof that was to be done instead of the re-roof, has that been completed?
No.
And when will it be undertaken? Because I understood it leaked on assets within the museum, which was part of the reason for needing to get it done.
Could we answer that one?
Either you or Leah?
Yep.
Through the chair, after a lengthy process getting both the contractor she qualified and sourcing the appropriate materials, we're now finally in a position where all health and safety matters have been signed off by GDC Health and Safety team, and we are able to progress. So we should be able to start pretty shortly, pending a discussion with the museum team.
Happening as we speak.
So to what extent has there been any damage to any of your assets through this winter? Luckily, it's been fairly dry.
And we are lucky it has been a fairly dry winter, and because we know that it's an issue, we are quite cautious in terms of where we place, for exhibitions, artworks and things like that, so none of those sorts of things will be at risk. But we have had some leaks in one particular spot, so
what it means is our wall linings, our carpets and all of those sorts of things are further degraded because of the leaks.
Without getting into detail today that we wouldn't want to get into detail, is there some learnings and a process that can be put in place so that we can more proactively manage that? We agreed that we weren't going to re-roof it at some significant sum, but if it does damage wall linings and carpets, then maybe we need to have the internal mechanisms have a look at a process, because it seems to take forever to let a contract once we determine to do it, because it would be at least 6 months ago that council agreed to have the repairs done rather than a whole re-roofing. So I just like to think that management could take on board some process that expedited the oversight of our assets in without getting into the detail.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, through the chair, fair point. I think the issue is actually not the last few months since council made the decision to do maintenance rather than renewal of the roof. I think the preceding approach around replacing the roof was where the hold-up happened, and actually if we'd gone down this track of maintenance, we would have dealt with this well before now. The focus is on getting this this issue sorted for October, and we will achieve that.
Thank you.
Councillor Dowsing.
As long as we keep on going to the next step and don't wait till there's another crisis before we do any other maintenance. That's really what I'm saying, but then have that process in place.
Thank you. My question around the is around the finances also, but it's more around the unfunded depreciation. You noticed last year we had 106,000 unfunded. This year 100,000 unfunded depreciation. What are the ramifications of not funding depreciation in this building, and what and is it something that we need to address now so that future issues don't occur? Perhaps a reallocation of the GDC fundings to depreciating our own building may be required, and then the shortfall found by operations.
Mrs. Walsh can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but actually the museum building is not council's building. It actually belongs to the trust, and that's actually stated in the report. So council can't depreciate somebody else's building. It belongs to the trust. The trust needs to deal with its depreciation funding for the building. It's probably a question for the trust actually around what is the model around depreciation, and if the trust is looking at renewals work, then how would it approach that? Probably from funding agencies, I would say, but.
Before we go into that question then, could I get some clarification on how how it's established that council was going to re-roof or do the roofing? Because I always believed it was our asset, and that's why we were maintaining it.
My understanding is, and I wasn't involved in any agreement of the lease and other agreements with the trust, but actually council took on those responsibilities to actually fund asset stuff around the condition of the building itself as part of the agreement with the trust to ensure that the community got a quality facility and service.
Well, so essentially, we've ended up with a building that would probably be quite happy if you guys had a building. So it's a bit of a probably discussion point for the future. So the museum historically funds a new building on a project by project basis, because if we funded depreciation, there'd be 100K that we can't spend on day-to-day stuff. That all gets a bit messy.
So I guess then that my concern is still valid, and that's that asset may no longer be appropriate for use within a certain amount of time, and unless it's reliant on council's maintenance or council's investment to improve that asset to a point where it is still usable, depreciation is the mechanism to facilitate replacement or to allow the owners to be in position to facilitate replacement if and when needed. So I'd just be worried that the asset would age to a point where maintenance is no longer appropriate, and council will have to make a determination on whether we still occupy that space or whether, you know, how we facilitate a museum.
Chairman, yeah, sorry.
So I'm just thinking about how to best answer that question. I suppose, as Alan was saying, that from the trust's perspective, projects such as the extension are externally funded rather as significant renewals within the galleries. So we seek grant funding as we did with the extension from lotteries and places like that, and that's how we fund projects as and when we can successfully receive grant funding. So your question was more around council's interest in the asset, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've answered it well enough that you're managing on an ad hoc basis and not doing depreciation because you're doing constant reinvestment through funding. My concern is that the base asset will one day be 100 years old, 150 years old, and may not be suitable in any shape or form for a museum service. In that case, council may have to look at something else. And what would you do then if it needed to be demolished and rebuilt? And it would likely be the same mechanism that you're using now. It would be that you would have to seek funding for that, and we may no longer be a tenant of yours, and that would be, or whatever it would be. But, yeah. Yeah. And that. Yep. Yeah.
That's the route we take.
And that's fine. That's you know, your management process is fine.
Okay. One of the really cool things is the Ministry of Education contract, and I see that's at roll over time. Do you anticipate it needing any changes and coming through at the same level, or is there indications that it could be a different contract? Or
well, we've actually just had our 3-year contract had been coming to its end point, and we were expecting to be able to have to put forward a new proposal, which is why it was noted here. But we've just had notification from the Ministry of Education that they want to roll our contract on for another 2 years under sort of existing terms, and they're really confident and happy with how the museum is delivering our ATC programs. So this is a real positive for us, is that we've got continuity of the contract for another 2-year rollover. And then the funding model is going to be changing slightly. The Ministry of Education have indicated in terms of how they fund learning experiences outside the classroom programs. But feeling really confident with that relationship with the ministry, so which is a significant portion of our funding. So that's good news.
excellent. Nothing further? Oh, sorry, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, if my memory serves me correctly, the deal struck in the late Bob Elliott's time was peppercorn rental, full maintenance. And that was brought about because there was quite a number of outstanding issues in terms of what required to be spent over there.
And just curious, really, solo exhibitions, can people just sort of ring you up and say, I want to do a solo exhibition? What's the criteria around those? There's quite a few through the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, for us, we feel we have a really important role in the community, encouraging artists who are maybe moving on from group exhibitions into having that first experience with a museum, maybe creating a solo exhibition. We often book our schedule for 2 to 3 years in advance. People have to put a proposal to us, samples of their work, we have discussions, that goes to, we have an exhibition committee where we decide what our program is going to look like, and we schedule around that. But really want to ensure we have a real balance of solo exhibiting artists, and we absolutely prioritise artists working in our community. So that's how that process works.
Excellent. All right, if there's nothing further, thanks for that. And recommendations, just noting it. Yep, just noting. Move. Councillor Foster and Councillor Burdett, if we haven't had. All those in favour? Against? Carried. That's us. Thanks for your attendance, committee. Well done. You need to